are live. Welcome everybody who's watching at home and those who are here live. I appreciate you guys being here too. This is a little bit of a late start, but this is a class that I have taught now for about 3 years in our office. And it's something that really I think all parents should know. And especially if you're somebody who still struggles with ear infections, because they're not fun, are they? Right? I mean, they really change the dynamics of who's sick, who's caring for people, and so forth. And a lot of people just don't know that chiropractic has such a profound influence on the immune system and how our bodies work, that if you can actually own this principle and take it and apply it to your family, you'll see some pretty neat things happen. And so there's another side to the story, and our chance to hear it. So the first thing is that we want to establish some common values for all people who care and influence for children, which is most of the people that we tend to know through our office and people that we meet typically would say, if I could care for something as naturally as possible, that work with my child's immune function and allow them to return to great things they want to do without excessive medication or without surgery, that'd be a good thing. I agree. Most of us, if you aren't that wired that way, that's okay. But I think it's just it's kind of a sane approach to things. The truth we're going to share about what causes childhood ear infections, how to prevent them, and also care for them, and then give you the tools and help that you can positively influence the lives of little ones. So I have found that the people who actually have had the best outcomes with their own health, when they share with other people, they own it so well to become ambassadors for good health, and you can really change your part of the world to a very much better, good way. Okay, so we want to influence our kids for the best, and our words and actions will influence them for positive or negative. And so, how do we do that? Well, we live well. We try to live in a preventative way, restore balance in the body, and of course, if something does become a crisis, we can treat it. But the best thing to know is you can always improve and change. That's for sure, right? No matter how poorly you think you may have done about it in the past, here's your chance to do it better this time around too. So the one phrase I've always heard, I try to live by, is that you've never truly failed until you fail to get up and try it one more time. Okay? If you don't do that, that's tough. Let's go. These are 4 truths you can definitely get the farm on. One is that there's an innate intelligence that runs the body. The chiropractors have always recognized this. There's this inborn ability that is so much more incredible than anything we'll ever invent, that is always telling your body how to run itself. The brain's telling the tissues what to do through the nervous system. They're sending messages back to the brain reporting what's going on, and the brain will make decisions about what to route energy and cells and activities to do based on what's happening in the periphery and inside your skin. The nervous system says that, or Gray's Anatomy says the nervous system is that system which controls and coordinates and harmonizes all other functions in the body. It doesn't say some of them, not most of them, it's all of them. So it really is the king or runs the entire body. Number 3 is that your spinal shape will directly affect how the nervous system functions. And so in the last about 40 years of our profession, we've spent a lot of time, a lot of hours, a lot of money trying to get to find what is normal for the spine. At least is there a range you can be. Most of us know that if your blood pressure is 120 over 80, that's considered to be like kind of average normal, right? You could be 110 and over 70, you can be 125 over 85, not really concerned. But if you come into a doctor's office and you're 200 over 130, so there's some sirens kind of going off in that doctor's head like, well, what's going on here, right? And so there are actually defined normal ranges for kids and adults, and actually they're relatively close, for how that spinal column needs to be shaped so that nerves can do their job the best. And then the spine misaligns, what we call vertebral subluxation, that negatively affects the nervous system function. So just think of like the dimmer switch in your house. If you take the dimmer switch and turn it down, there's going to be a change in actually how bright those bulbs are. Well, in the same way that your health is going to be taking a dimmer approach to its functions if there's misalignment in your spine. And so we are all about changing those things. The ear's like any other body part, it's dependent on nerves to do its function. Part of it, of course, is the special sensing, the hearing part of it, right? When in school we learned there's these 5 things that nerves do for us, right? The special senses: sight, smell, taste, touch, and forgive me. There's one more, sorry. Anyway, so hearing, so here it is, and so of course we want to make sure we protect our ears that way. If you have to go take in live music like I do, take hearing protection, okay? If you're working in a noisy environment, make sure you protect yourself there too. Wear things that you need to. I actually would take 2 sets. I take the foam earplugs and coverings so that it gets down to about 50 decibels. That's perfect for me. It's very sensitive. There's also the position sense it provides. If your inner ear is off, in the cochlear and various things too, you can actually have a sense that the room is spinning or you're spinning, what we commonly call vertigo. And there's actually a way to adjust the body of the ears to influence those things as well too. There's the feeling part, which is touch and pain, of course. That just be basic stuff. If you're outside in some cold weather, your ears will start to hurt and eventually go numb, potentially heading towards frostbite. That's the pain part of it. There are nerves that actually control the motor function. Believe it or not, there's actually a little muscle in here called the stapedius. And I think it's the smallest muscle in the human body. And when you're around loud sounds, especially like big, deep bass sounds, that little muscle fires to keep your eardrum from moving too much and causing hearing damage. Kind of cool, right? And the last thing is, there's nerves that control the blood supply to your ear, which is bringing oxygen, hormones, nutrition, and white blood cells to the ear as well too. So if you guys know the story about chiropractic, they actually think this is how the first chiropractic adjustment gave a guy his hearing back. A guy named Harvey Lillard was working in a building where D.D. Palmer was, and D.D. Palmer studied the human body and saw there was this intimate relationship between how the nerves were and actually going to every part of the body. He says, I wonder if the tone of those nerves has a difference on health. His janitor told him that he had actually lifted a bucket or two and actually felt something shift in his spine. And over the coming weeks, had actually progressively lost his hearing to the point where he could not even hear the horses on the cobblestone streets with their hooves. And then he said, what's going on? So he says, well, let me look at you and see what's going on. He found some vertebrae that were not in their normal position and started to work on them. And I think he said he saw him 30 days in a row and worked on those things. And this guy got his hearing back, which is kind of a cool thing, right? So they think that what happened was he affected those trophic nerves that control the dilation and constriction of arteries that carry the messages and especially the nutrition to your ear, and actually helping get his hearing back. So your nervous system allows you to live in harmony with yourself and your environment. So like we say, to regulate your internal body temperature, there are nerves that regulate that. There's ones that regulate your heart rate and your digestion, that keep things moving through. There's also ones that help you handle your environment. So if you go into a room where it's hot, you start to sweat. Go into a cold room, you get goosebumps, you start to shiver. Fred Barge was one that I was very much privileged to have heard him speak when he was still alive. Kevin said there's only two causes of illness. That there's the body's inability to recognize it itself. So an example of that would be something like, say, for example, diabetes. Normally your body senses that there's sugar that are going up and it starts to secrete insulin to bring that back into line. The problem is that the insulin producing mechanism is now shut down, or at least it's not working well. That's what, you can't regulate your body. Number two would be you can't recognize its environment. So in the case of an ear infection, the normal procedure is that a child is exposed to a germ like a virus or bacteria, and the nervous system goes into alarm state, sends white blood cells in to kill those germs off, and then you don't have an infection. But if it's slow to respond, or not fast enough to respond, or not strong enough to respond, that's when the body actually will get an infection. So that's your body's in that environment, this environment. So if your nervous system is functioning at less than 100%, we can actually have a person who has partial or total deafness. They can have vertigo. They might actually feel pain, tingling, or numbness. They may actually have poor motor control of the muscles of the ear. And then lastly, there will be some kind of inflammation and or infection when the autonomic or self-governing nerves are actually out of place there too. Now, kids are at a disadvantage for two main reasons. They're more prone to get it. On the general rule, their immune system is not mature yet. Children have not been exposed to as many things as you have as an adult, right? They don't have the privilege of having been around this planet and suck their hands and stuff and put things in their mouth. They will eventually, if you watch them, right? Hit your 1 or 2, they find stuff on the floor and everything goes in. The funny thing is that they say that the little girls outgrow that around age 2, the boys will outgrow it to about age 73, okay? But there it is. And so when they're exposed to something for the first time, the body does not recognize, oh, we need to fight this. Guess what can happen? Things get past the first line of defense, and it takes root and causes an infection. But past that point, that immune system is now queued up to make sure that it knows that it should attack those things. And the second thing is, it's the anatomical development that you may have heard is the eustachian tube, which is a tube that connects the middle of your ears to the throat, is that in children it actually lays flatter. As we grow and get older, it actually starts to angle more. So children actually have a much more slow emptying of anything that might be fluid in here into the throat that an adult has the steeper incline there. And because it's flatter, there's more prone to actually having blockage and actually draining slower. So if a child, say, is drinking a bottle on their back, one of the biggest disadvantages they could ever have is that that fluid would actually not all go into their stomach, but some would go into their ears and then sit there. And if you know anything like a river versus a pond, ponds develop scum because the water's not moving. In the same way that kids can get an infection, because that's not moving along there too. And so that's another thing that makes kids more prone to actually have an ear infection. So the perfect storm for an ear infection would be this. If you actually have a kid who actually has the nervous system being suppressed, it could be from subluxation for sure, stress. You know, growing up is not easy. You watch kids, they go through a lot of changes in those first 5 years, learning how to roll over, crawl, whatever, learning how the world works and so forth, falling off of cribs and changing tables. I've seen that happen before. Stress, that too, and then lack of sleep too. Sometimes kids, if they have colic or if they just have a really hard time sleeping, that will affect their immunity. You know, we see this all the time with older people. Kids in college right now, they're trying to get a bunch of stuff done for a fall break. I guarantee you there's going to be some people who tomorrow, or I guess it'll be next week, will actually have some sicknesses going on because they just stayed up to all hours doing, you know, papers and caffeinating themselves, what have you. Well, little kids stay up more so too. Then the next thing would be, if you take the soil of the body and now fertilize it with things like, say, like just a bad environment, say lack of fruits and vegetables, things that are high in vitamin C and vitamin A, very good stuff for protecting your mucous membranes. Or if the child's consuming too much sugar, dairy, and grains, especially processed grains. You hear Dr. Paul talk about that, right? Things that can cause leaky gut syndrome. Especially a child who's consumed, say like corn or wheat products, soy products that have been sprayed that are GMO. That would be one of the worst things you could have, because that's going to make a kid's GI system very porous, and things get through that shouldn't. And then lastly, you nurture the seed. Now the virus and bacteria, many of which are already there, have an opportunistic infection opportunity to take over and become a full-on infection that were being held in check before from any one of those causes there too. So you may want to take this picture of the slide. This has all the things I've been able to find that actually are the known contributors to actually having kids having more ear infections. One of those would be moms who actually drink alcohol during pregnancy. That's not a good thing there, okay? Number two, exposure to secondhand smoke. You can imagine, right? If you actually have this particulate matter floating through your house, that shouldn't be there. It's like having your chimney closed or something. All the smoke is permeating there. Number three, pacifier use is linked to it. Isn't that interesting? Using a pacifier too much could actually cause it. Bottle feeding, allergies. If the kid already has allergies, that's a sign that immunity is weak. If the child is obese and carrying too much weight. If they have other immune system disorders, that would make sense, right? If the kid's getting sick in general, then they're much more likely to actually have a problem with their ears. And then lastly, if they're enrolled in daycare. Now, if you've ever seen this, the parents actually take their kid to places, sometimes they'll say, man, hand, foot, mouth disease has gone through the entire thing, or there's one kid had a cough and now they all have the cough, right? So they're getting exposed that way. If you have siblings who actually have recurring ear infections, that can be a fact that there's something going on in the household itself in the environment, or there's immunity similarities, and then of course having the lower socioeconomic status, which in and of itself isn't an issue, but what kind of things are typically subsidized by food stamps and so forth? These healthy foods typically? Yeah, they're high sugar drinks and things like that. And then thankfully, RFK Jr. and other people are trying to get that to change so that those will actually pay for healthier foods. So any one or all those can contribute to why a person will actually get ear infections, okay? The classic signs of infection, these were identified back by a guy in the medieval times. Says, I notice whenever there's an infection, there's four things going on. One is it gets hot. Therefore, we have thermometers, right? We have the ones we can do in the mouth. Of course, the new ones now go across the forehead or near the ear. Number two would be swelling. The body sends a bunch of things to the ear to try and help that ear heal. And of course, you can actually sometimes even see puffiness. When we look into it through an otoscope to look at a child's ear, we can actually see their eardrum pushing back out at us. It looks like it's like a balloon being stretched. Okay. Number three is that there's redness. That's because of the increased blood flow and the inflammation that comes from those white blood cells coming in. And then lastly, of course, it hurts. The kid says, "Mom, it hurts," and the kid will sometimes tug at it, or they'll just be messing with it. And sometimes it makes it like pain on the side of their head, whatever it may be. Those are the classic signs of some type of infection, but the eardrum is very specifically where you find that area. The symptoms do not tell the whole story, because ear infection can be present without one or more of those symptoms. In fact, sometimes they actually find these things almost like the kid, if they have a high pain tolerance, they may have no signs of it. And then the kids seem to be a little bit warm. Okay? So don't just go off to having to have all four of those and say, oh, we need to look into it now. There could be other things going on as well too. So when a child actually has this going on, this is true of any health crisis, but an ear infection would be like this. There's two things going on. One is, right now we actually have a fire going on. We need to put the fire out for sure. Okay, there's no question about it. When a house is burning, you put everything you can down to try and save that. But once that's out, we need to actually have a general contractor come in and help us rebuild, right? So really we would say chiropractic can do both of those things. Sometimes we have to recruit the medical model to get the fire put out because, say, the infection's got out of control. But then we have to make sure we build health, because who wants to have that come back again? I can't tell you the number of parents who I've seen who actually have had, in fact, you'll see some stories where kids have had multiple ear infections in just a few months. Like the tissue's just weak. They just got over one, now they're getting it again. Let's make sure we rebuild our health. So how do we do that? Well, the first question you want to ask when a kid actually has an ear infection, is this truly infectious otitis media? Now, sometimes they've said that just let the kid go. That's going to be your discretion with your physician, of course. You have to make sure that, but sometimes the kid just has it for a short time, and they get over it, and actually they become stronger immune to it. Number two, if it's infectious, if it's viral or bacterial, if it's viral, doctors will say don't give them an antibiotic, because what does an antibiotic work on? Only bacteria, right? The possibility is you would be creating antibiotic-resistant bacteria in your child by giving it, and also changing the flora of their gut. Remember Dr. Paul talking about antibiotic use? It actually starts to wipe out some of your natural flora, and you have to reseed that after a while. That's not a good thing to have going on. Next thing is, if it's bacterial, what organism is it? Be as specific as possible. One of the problems we've had is that doctors have taken the easy route, and they've started to actually just prescribe broad spectrum antibiotics, things that would wipe out everything, just because they don't want to check what's going on. And well, there you go. You wipe out a lot more than you planned on, and you make it, once again, less effective down the road if you have to use it again. And of course, the next question becomes that if you do all those things, let's say you end up having an infection that requires an antibiotic, do you have a plan to restore the flora that you're actually wiping out? And so we want to make sure we have good bacteria coming in, which is why we sell the probiotics that we do. We've talked about those slides in our office. You need a prebiotics too, the things that the bacteria will grow on, and then the probiotics come in and actually feed on those things, which is usually fiber and other things. Without that, your child's at increased risk for irritable bowel syndrome, thrush, which is actually a yeast overgrowth, and actually having Crohn's disease too. They know that people actually had lots of antibiotic exposure starting young in their lives. It changes their flora enough that it becomes also an autoimmune response to your colon, and Crohn's is a bad one to deal with, guys. Crohn's, when it's left unchecked, can lead to things such as internal bleeding and sadly even colon cancer, because there's this ongoing inflammation that's not being resolved. So I really encourage you, if you have to do it, but let's make sure we look at what's going on. Now, finding it has its limits though, and it never rebuilds. This is actually from the Journal of American Medical Association. This is actually directly from their literature. It says antibiotic therapy is not an effective treatment against otitis media, and the rates of recurrent infection are significantly higher in children who have actually been treated with antibiotics. So it's almost like you get in the system and you're kind of there, right? If that's the only thing you're doing for your child is just let's wait till the next one hits and give it, there actually are stronger bacteria coming back, and your child's immunity is not actually being developed either. So what about the tube surgery? Well, here it is. So uncorrected cause leads to recurring infections. It should be suggested and considered only as a last resort. Okay, so it does, it's like when they say it's raising white flags, they're saying we don't know what's causing this. Your kid just has a weak immune system, let's go put the tube in. That's what it looks like. There's a hole in the eardrum, and this device is placed in there to let the pus and everything just drain out of that thing continuously, so it never builds pressure in there. If you look at the literature, what it says is that the possible side effects from actually having this done, and they actually show some of that on this picture here, is that there can actually, a kid who actually, when they have the surgery done, they can actually have an effect on not feeling things well. If they have to be anesthetized to have that done, that's a thing that's not great for our brain. The tube can become blocked. Like there could actually be wax that goes in here or fluid that comes out, especially if it's thick and infected. Number two, there would be a persistent perforation that actually happens even when the thing comes out. What they think is that their plan was that these things would go in, they would serve the child while it was there, and then as they outgrew this thing, as their eardrum grew, it would fall out and the eardrum would just grow over. But in some people, it actually ends up just remaining. The hole ends up remaining, which leaves your ear vulnerable to having things cross over, especially if you use Q-tips. Not a good idea. And there could be scarring of the eardrum, where it actually is this tissue that's not like the original tissue. Notice how this is nice and kind of translucent. Well, this is really hard to see through. Some of that is actually, I think, the infection, but some of it's also some scarring of the eardrum. And there can be things called cholesteatomas, which actually form as a cholesterol little ball, and actually the child can have reduced hearing. There's somebody that we actually care for who had multiple ear infections as a child, and they ended up doing a surgery on him that ended up leaving him deaf, unfortunately. So one posture you have to work with him very much is actually he has a right head rotation because only this one ear works, and so he's always turning his head to hear more. So just know there are risk factors having it done. I would always make sure you've exhausted your options before you end up having that done, okay? So what would home building look like with ear infections? Well, the first thing would be, how did the child's immune system get compromised? Whatever that cause of interference is, let's ensure with it. Was the child subluxated? Were their nerves off? Did the kidneys get adjusted, get corrected, and then stay healthy? I've really become convinced, guys, that there are people in our office who get the concept of correction, but they still have a lot to learn about the whole concept of staying healthy. Like if you, let me put it to you this way, if you actually had you knew you were overweight, and you went to the gym and faithfully worked out and ate well and so forth, you got to the ideal weight you wanted to get to, if you at that point said, I've gotten what I want out of exercise, I'm done with it, and I stopped doing it, what was most likely to happen? Put it back on, right? Like you have to do something to preserve those things. Like what's good to get you well is enough to stay well too. And it's true of all the good endeavors in life. Number three, was the child sleep deprived? Children need at least 9 to 10 hours of sleep per night. You've seen this, right? They go to bed before us and sometimes get up after us, especially when they're growing. That's really important. There's a great book called Why We Sleep. And Matthew Walker wrote that book. In there he says basically if you say, like some people have said in our culture, there's production, hurry. If you say, I'll have time to sleep when I'm dead, he says, lacking sleep, you'll probably get there faster. That's for sure. Like there's so many bad things about it. Increased risk for diabetes, high blood pressure, just lots of bad stuff. Fourthly, you'd ask, did this child actually have too much sugar, dairy, or greens coming in? Because those seem to be real possibilities about why they had that stuff in their ear tubes anyway. You need to reduce or eliminate those things from the child's diet. And then lastly, is the child having too little fruits or vegetables, potentially water, having a deficit of water? Big ones for immune function are vitamin C and D and other things as well too. Well, in his case, this child needs to get more of those. Now I forgot to put these out on the camera for us, but we do have an easy way to do that for kids, which is called Juice Plus. This is actually the capsule that if you have this as an adult, that's between about 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables and just a few capsules, and the kids actually get it in a really chewy gummy. Now, truth be told, there's lots of adults who like the gummies too. Okay, they just like swallowing capsules. But that is an amazing product that gives, it's organic fruit and vegetables distilled down with the water taken out, the fiber taken out, the sugar taken out, just the pure goodness of the plant to help build your immunity. And it's just a great product there. I can't recommend it enough, okay? The most common subluxations that we find when we examine kids who are having ear infections are the first three, one's in the cervical spine because they have such a strong relationship with the vagus nerve and immune function, and then the upper thoracic spine too, because the sympathetic nerves that come from that area too will go to that area and control the dilation or constriction of the blood vessels. If we have those things all cleared out, the kids typically respond very well. Sometimes their ear ossicles, or those bones of their ear, can be misaligned as well too, especially if they actually had a previous ear infection that caused their eardrum to stretch. Those ear bones can become misaligned, and we've actually worked with people who've actually had that. It's a really neat adjustment to do for the ear. But these subluxations reduce the potential of life, and the vast majority of your nerves have nothing to do with pain. So just because you say, well, my kid has no ear pain or has no neck pain or mid-back pain, they could easily be subluxated, and you would know it. Kids just don't have the patterns that most adults do as far as the findings go. So I just wanted to give you some examples. This is Valencia, who you all know, who works at our front desk. He's actually holding Matthew. That's not her son, it's one of our patient's sons. They brought little Matthew in because he was a year and a half old, and he actually had 3 ear infections in 3 months. The mom said that we came in because Matthew had recurring ear infections. I felt like we were at the doctor constantly, and I was always having to aggressively treat my little one-year-old son. Since starting treatment care, Matthew has not had any other ear infection. He sleeps through the night and can fully lift his head, and she's actually decided he will live a happy, healthy life, and that was really cool because his neck was like this when he came in, built entirely the wrong way. We worked with him 3 times a week for 6 weeks. He got his neck curved back, and that allowed that nerve supply to totally respond and actually create the environment when it was not allowing those bacteria to grow anymore. Fantastic change. This is little, this is Eva. She was 4 months old. She had 3 recurrent ear infections and had been on antibiotics for over a month. Measured that straight through for 4 months. Pediatrician told us to expect ear tubes for her in the near future. Mom says I was nervous about the kind of adjusting Dr. would have to do with Eva since she's an infant, but it did not cause her any discomfort at all. If I was to show you the amount of pressure that it takes to adjust a child, you watch me touch a potato, see if it's right. That's about how much force we have to use. It's very light. And we use the instrument as well too. And as a result, Eva has been through only 2 or 3 cold central care and she had no ear infection since, which is really cool. Here's her old neck curve, how straight it was. There was almost no curve there. Well, there was some, but not enough. She got it here within just, I think it was a month's time that we restored her neck curve like that. And that power supply now going to the ears properly allowed her to not get sick. This is little Margaret, 4 years old, neck pain and headaches, ear infections, told she needed tubes. Okay, there she is. It's a totally straight neck. That should never be the case. There's actually published normals for kids all the way down to age 0. That's never normal to see a neck that straight. It just pulls the spinal cord, stretches it end from end. The ears are being affected by this, and the kid gets his neck curved back. Little applause from the crowd there. Isn't that nice? And the neck curves back, and after 6 weeks there, this is what's great. They'll say the child has a spontaneous remission of ear infections. Was that spontaneous? Is it really? Did it just, we don't know what caused it? No, the body's just working and communicating better. So again, these things are totally possible to do for kids. We love doing it. So I want to put this in a context for you. This is actually how I hope you can take away this mental image with you when you leave here tonight. That there are things that we would absolutely say are the vital needs of any human body. Any living thing has things that are vital things. And what would be one thing you know you have to live?
Water.
Water. There you go. That's good. Let's start with this. We'll start with food first, okay? Food is something we have to have. This is what comes in and actually causes either your cells to be able to have energy or to repair. Now, how long can you live without food?
Several weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody pretty famous fasted for 4 days and 40 nights, right? But that's about the limit of it. And so your body can majorly make through that sort of thing. But yes, and so the quality of food that comes in makes a difference, doesn't it? Like if I was to put Jenna on a full month diet, and all she can have is donuts, okay? And I put Doug on a diet where you can actually eat lean meats and fruits and vegetable stuff. Who's still going to be doing better in 30 days? Yeah, Doug will, absolutely. Your cells run best on those kind of things, not hydrogenated fats and sugar and things like that too. So the quality of what we have is good, and of course the quantity matters too, right? We don't want to overeat, and certainly not undereat as well too, but that's not most Americans' problems is undereating. Okay, number 2 is water. That's what Jenna mentioned. Water is important. Hydration. That's more fundamental than food because how long can you live without water? How long could you have if you stop drinking water? Yeah, I'll say 3 to 7 days. Depends a little bit on that, right? But yeah, for sure. And so water is actually the base in which all reactions in your body happen. It helps form your blood, your cerebrospinal fluid, your fluid in your eyes, the whole thing. And so without water, we would dehydrate and die. So the question here becomes, does the quality of what you drink matter? Poor Jenna all Jenna can have for 7 days is Coke. And Melina gets to drink water, pure water for 7 days. Who's healthier in 7 days? Jenna, you're in rough shape now. Donuts and soda, right? There it is. Yeah, it's not good for us, right? So water keeps us, is also the thing through which we excrete a lot of things that we don't need in our bodies as well too, the waste products, okay? Even more basic than those is what? What do we do even through the night? Yeah, we need oxygen. No, oxygen is the thing that in which the catalyst for all things to happen in our body. How long can you have without oxygen before you're in serious trouble?
5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 to 7 minutes, maybe 10 if you're underwater in cold water or something like that, right? Or something like that, but it's not very long. And then cells will start to die there. So what is one way that can increase my oxygen intake? For sure.
Exercise.
Exactly, right? We know that exercise actually brings in a ton of oxygen to perforate your tissues with oxygen. Actually, your body has a hard time growing bad cells in that environment. Also, many viruses and bacteria have a hard time being in an oxygen-rich environment as well too. And so this makes a difference. If I just had somebody be a sofa, sit around for 7 days, they actually showed one time that if you actually are put on complete bed rest for a week, you lose roughly 1% of your lean body mass and 1% of your aerobic capacity within a week. So if you wonder why, if you've been laid up for a week and you've laid mostly in bed, well, it kind of feels like it's hard to get out of the chair then, and you feel less energy and less get up and go, and less staying with it, less endurance. There's a real reason for it, is because you actually have reduced your body's ability to distribute oxygen through your tissues. Now, we've got those three. What's the one thing we're forgetting here? There's one thing that you have to coordinate and direct all this stuff to happen.
Chiropractic.
Okay? Because we take care of what? Right. This is it, nerve flow, right? Chiropractic care is the thing that allows you to keep those brain cells and those tissue cells they're talking to at 100% flow as close as we can in terms of speed and strength. And the more care and more correction you get, the better that is. These things are all important, but if you came across the scene where you actually saw there was an accident, okay? One person actually says, I'm hungry. One person says, I'm thirsty. One person actually has a wound that's bleeding out, and one person has a broken neck. Who do you attend to first? The broken neck, because that's going to kill you the fastest, right? Once that's taken care of, stabilized, then you deal with the person who actually needs maybe a tourniquet or something to stop the bleeding, and then we get some water and some food for these people too. But that's how critical those things are. And when EMTs come across the scene, they're taught to triage those things, even in ERs. So I would say the chiropractic approach makes the most sense, because we're going to say, look, let's see if this child's nervous system is actually taken care of, and then we're going to get and take care of these lifestyle things as well too. And if you can address all 4 of these at one time, I can't think of a better approach that would actually be more comprehensive than that approach right there. Does that make sense? Okay, good. All right, so this is sane healthcare. Chiropractic first, drug second, surgery last. That's the way I would always go about it, because you can always, chiropractic care has no negative side effects. The upside is incredible. Drugs can wipe things out, but at least they're temporary. Your body can get rid of them in most cases, but there are side effects. And then lastly, surgery is a very permanent solution, whatever you do. No matter what you have done, even if it saves your life, surgery permanently alters your body. So if you have to have it done, great. But I would never start with that one too. So the question is, why is this order? It's because it makes sense, right? Our society, though, has been told that you actually do the opposite, right? Let's give the person drugs first, then maybe do surgery. And if all else fails, hey, have you ever considered doing something natural? It's like, who didn't raise that question first? Well, we try to make sure that you think that way. And I've actually found those times, for example, 2 years ago when I was dealing with my kidney issue, I just made sure that all my nurses and doctors knew that's where I was coming from, and they said that makes perfect sense. So it really changed the conversation about what they were recommending too. So if you turn this thing upside down, where you have the most expensive and most side effect laden healthcare system on the planet, which ours is. We spend now about $4.5 trillion a year in healthcare. We, as a nation, we have only 5% of the world's population, but we take almost now 70% of the world's drugs are consumed in this country. So the ratio is just out of control there, right, too? It really is one of the leading things that has produces side effects, everything from a minor annoyance to very serious things. And it's also made it so it's very expensive as well, too. So if you could change that, you would actually have the safest, least expensive, and one of the most effective healthcare systems you could have, which is what we're trying to move towards. And I think you guys in this room and those who are watching at home, you're part of this cultural change. You're taking this message frequently for yourself, which I appreciate. And number 2 is I hope you're going to share with some friends too. Okay, this is a really powerful thing you can do. Is just let's think this through and talk about how we can take care of our lives and our health in a more sane way. Okay, so who do you know that doesn't know what you should? Doesn't know what you do but should. Okay, so we actually have this thing we do. This is our last one of the year we're going to do, which is we call an expansion cycle, which is a chance to expand our influence to the world in a very direct way. And what we're telling people is, look, family and friends who actually should know this information, but they just don't know it, right? That's the thing. You can be that ambassador, that newscaster that brings the information to them. So what we do If they want to talk with me, we actually have a consultation card. I don't know if we have any of those in the back. We might have run out of those. But I'd be happy to have their name and number, and I will call and talk to them if they have a question, or they can call into the office. You are welcome to bring them to this class online. Now we will have it recorded and direct them to our Facebook page, have them join that. And after 29 days, it's going to be posted on YouTube. There's that special code you can get on to get those talks for yourself. And you can bring them to other classes we're going to have too. We will probably offer this class again next year at some point, and we're going to talk about building your immunity. Dr. Paul and I taught, I bet we taught 2 classes a year about building your immunity during COVID because people were so concerned. They were coming in with masks, and they said, this is like the most sane place I've ever been all day. Everybody's in the store taking all the toilet paper and yelling at each other, and I come in here, and everybody's like, yeah, we're not afraid. We build our immunity. We're not being crazy, but we're being smart about it, right? And then also there's a complimentary screening that we do. People come into our office, and they tell us, hey, I know Jenna, I know Melina, whatever. We will be happy to look at their posture and see what's going on, and also do a palpation check to see is there any evidence of subluxation. Most of their times past that point, we would actually have that person, we can tell them then what the cost would be for the exam and films if they want to proceed to that. With the event of a gift to health, as long as, I have to say this just so we're compliant, the person does not have Medicaid or Medicare, okay? We are happy to do those things for them at our expense, okay? We will actually waive the fee for their exam and films and give them a chance to have a full report of findings to see if we can help them. There's absolutely no obligation, but for those people who are just kind of on the fence saying, I've always wondered what chiropractic could do, what it's like, could it help me? And they want to just see it there's no involvement financially for them, just to see what's going on. Have them come in and take advantage of this. We have 5 of those left, and they will be, I guarantee they will be gone before probably the end of the next week there. So have them come in there, guys. So this is not the end, it's the beginning. This is me taking care of Ezra, my son, who's approximately 3. And that little guy, has he had even 1 ear infection?
I don't think so.
I don't think he ever has. He's had a few throat ones, but never an ear infection. And that's because he keeps his nervous system relatively healthy. Really very, very healthy. He grew up in a chiropractic family, he has no choice. And then this is the other option, right? We go through all these things to treat things that are laborsome, costly, and sometimes only a temporary patch on a burning fire there too. So I just want to encourage you guys to take what you've learned tonight and say, what can I do to take our game up to the next level? What can I do to level up, as I say? Well, it might be you need to change some nutritional things. We're happy to teach that. There's going to be classes all nutrition next year. In fact, this year we don't have a class. We had healthy alternatives for holidays. We'll try to bring that class back next year because you guys can see that you can actually make some reasonably healthy holiday treats that won't make you get all wacky immune system wise. Maybe I can get my kid more sleep, get him put in bed sooner, right? We don't want to stimulate them with screens and stuff till 9 or 10 p.m. Let's get those things turned off at 6 and let them wind down. Let them climb on dad while he's tractioning a little bit and burn some calories, right? If this kid needs to actually, get his nervous system evaluated, please by all means bring him in. Let's see what's going on there and get those subluxations taken care of, and then actually keep them staying away too. And then I say, guys, that you have a chance to change your family and your immediate, circle of influence that way, then go to the people who are the next rung out there, because there's just a lot of people who still don't know this stuff. One thing is for sure, in chiropractic, we do not have the budget that Big Pharma does. Big Pharma can buy tons of ads. In fact, they're almost like most news programs are kind of bought and paid for. Chiropractic has survived for 130 years now, 130 years, because it's been one person telling another person, right? And what's really nice to see now is that when I talk with people in my office, many of them say, in my immediate circle of closest friends, there's nobody we know who does not have a chiropractor, which is great. I was hoping that would happen by the time I retired. That we'd see like 60, 70, 80% of the culture saying, not do you have a chiropractor, but who is your chiropractor? And we'd love to be yours if you don't have one. So with that being said, guys, we're done.